So welcome everybody to the Taxation Aid Committee for meeting for February 4th, 2021. The time now is 5:05 p.m. and I'll just get started with the remote meeting procedures reading here. So in keeping with the ongoing emergency order from Governor Charlie Baker to limit gatherings and maximize social distancing, and under legislation passed to address remote board meetings during the emergency declaration, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count toward quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom on a computer or mobile device, you'll need to download the Zoom app at zoom.us and create an account, or use one of the call-in numbers listed on the agenda. To join by telephone only, you will need the meeting ID. While conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While board members, town staff, participants, and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the meeting muted and with no video feed from them. Public lines will be muted throughout the meeting to allow the board to conduct business and to eliminate background noise. For general meetings and only for items under which the chair solicits public comment, members of the public participating in the Zoom meeting may submit a written question via text chat, provided they include their full name and address for the public record. Chair reserves the right to discard comments submitted they are off topic and do not include the name and address. Members of the public viewing the meeting on ECAT may submit questions in writing via email to me at cahonen, that's CAHONEN, at easton.ma.us. The chair reserves the right to respond to questions during the live meeting, but may limit time for such activities. Any questions not addressed in the meeting may be answered afterwards via email and will be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting for the public record. All votes will be by roll call. When all business indicated on the agenda has been completed, the members will vote to adjourn the meeting, signaling the end of the meeting and the termination of the ECAT recording. All participants will be disconnected from the meeting at that time. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from our first meeting. Did anybody have any discussion on that, or can we get a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I move to accept the minutes as written.
I second.
Thank you. All right. So Linda motioned, Andrew second. We accept the minutes as written. So the second item on the agenda, setting up the account with finance. Linda,
Yep.
You want to go ahead?
I reached out to Wendy, and we are going to set it up. I did need to discuss whether these were going to be handled like exemptions or as exemptions, like other exemptions, or if they're going to be handled like the senior relief, the senior tax work-off program, which is actually a paycheck. I don't think that's what we have intended, and it's not a payroll item. If anything, it would be that people would have to be set up as vendors, and they would get a 1099 at the end of the year for a gift. Basically, they would get a 1099 for a gift. I don't think that's the way that it's generally done. I believe that generally it's run through the assessors, and they're applied against people's tax bills as exemptions in accordance with that particular paragraph of the law. But I need to confirm that with the assessors.
Okay, and that's
the way we do it.
Sorry?
Okay.
That's the way we do it, Linda.
Okay.
That was my understanding. Just reading back through the law, it's an exemption provided against the bill.
Yes, it gets taken out of the money, because every bill has to be paid one way or the other, whether it's paid through an exemption or senior tax work-off or something. So it'll be paid out of the fund as opposed to being paid out of the allowance for exemptions and abatements overlay account.
Okay.
But Wendy, I needed to clarify that with Wendy, but I'll work that out with Wendy.
Okay. And I think on a separate matter, you saw the account I set up for the similar.
Yes, with the veterans.
Check. That's a completely separate legislation that was passed at town meeting regarding strictly veterans. So that's
Yes.
separate but similar.
Yes,
So,
yes,
no need to go into that other than just to avoid confusion of the two that
Right.
are similar. We'll discuss. I don't want those two to compete with each other, so we can also discuss that.
right.
Right.
A question,
So, yes.
a question while we're on the subject of the account. When could we anticipate the ability to receive donations online or someone to make donations online? My thought was when we were discussing when we were discussing the ability to put things on the bills, there would be an initial cost to that. And so my thought is if we can get the donation set up online, then we could have a soft opening of sorts where people could make donations without us really soliciting, just so that we could fund those initial investments, if you will, and cover the initial costs of
Yep.
suppliers and things like that.
Yep. I also need to talk to Wendy. I just haven't been able to connect with her over the past little while. But initially, I thought that the amount that we would have to pay for the flyers, and I think I put that in an email, it was something like 2 cents per flyer that goes out with the bills. That cost cannot be picked up by the town. However, that doesn't mean that, just like other exemptions, I don't know if we can run that through the regular postage, if that can be run through some sort of an account like postage. I have to ask Wendy about that. Otherwise, it will be up to us to come up with that money, because there's no money appropriated for this type of expenditure.
Right. And it's a catch-22 of how can we raise money if we don't have money
Correct.
to raise money
We gotta
with.
spend money to get the money.
Right.
Exactly.
Scott,
Right.
do you have input on that from your experience in Pembroke? Or, I'm sorry,
No, it's
Duxbury?
actually with Duxbury.
Yes.
We don't have anything set up just like this, Corey. But I do know on the postage, and I'm sure, Linda, this probably works the same in Easton. I mean, we can set it up by department, and we can see exactly what's being charged to each department. So if we could set something up, like say, whatever we decide to call this on the postage machine. So if we spend $50, $100, or whatever it be, you would have to specifically state that this is what it's for, because you key in that number. Does your postage machine work the same way?
The postage machine in the here is when you go to put mail on anything, you put in a code, and that code corresponds to your department.
Yeah.
So so each department, so it's just broken down by department. Whether or not we could call it postage is a question, because that's a bit of a stretch. And what the law and there's a little bit of a conflict, because the law says that we can do this so long as we don't add cost to the postage. So it's kind of I'm not sure if we're gonna. My memory from when I handled this in Mendon was that we had to come up with the money ourselves, and we had a person who donated some money as sort of seed money. It's only a couple $100, but nevertheless, let me talk to Wendy and find out if there's any opportunity for us to use some account through the town.
Right.
Because I was thinking, just like the assessors, you're mailing things to people who have been, applications for exemptions and 61A and all that kind of stuff. So why not be able to do this?
Right.
Although if it were to come out of the assessor's budget, I'm sure that you and Rob would have a problem.
That would be a problem.
So, and the problem is we haven't budgeted for it.
Right.
So we're kind of caught in the middle for a little while.
Right.
I think if we have to use some sort of seed money concept,
Yep.
that would be fine, as long as we can physically get the money in through if the account's set up online.
Yes.
We
And I
we
can,
put a small balance in there through
yeah,
friends and family or whatever it may be.
okay.
At least
I
for
can-
donations.
I can reach out to our payment processor they've already said that they can accommodate this type of thing. And just if anybody pays their bills online, you go in and you select whether you want to pay your real estate, your excise, your water, your trash. It'll just be another category for donations to the Veterans Fund or to the Senior Tax Relief Fund. So, but I will reach out to them and have them set it up, and then as soon as we're confident that we're ready to go with it, I'll just tell them, have them flip the switch.
You know what I was thinking earlier today, Linda? I'm wondering if there are any other towns that actually have a similar program. Robbie and I were talking on another issue, and he had brought up that he might want to be involved in this Zoom tonight, but he thought that Holliston had a very similar program that we're actually trying to pull together now.
Yep. I know Holliston has one.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Quite a few towns. The application I put together came from. Actually, I think it came from what Mendon had put together. I modified certain things that they had.
Oh, that's scary.
I fixed it up nice. Hingham has a very loosely defined program where it's basically you just write a letter into your taxation aid committee. Which we'll get to that point on the agenda.
Yes.
Apologize to cut in. I just wanted to interject that
Yep.
there are quite a few towns and they've been doing it since like the late 90s, early 2000s. So
Okay.
it's been around.
Yeah, I agree. I did some of my own unofficial research. Natick, Northborough, Truro, you can just hit Google, and I was just kind of looking for the application item that we're going to get to later. Is they all have a different way of doing it. So
Yeah.
kind of nice that the road's paved for us a little bit.
Right.
We can see what works in other places and pick and choose what we think would work for us.
I agree.
Definitely. So let's see here. Item 3, discuss target recipients in the relationship to other exemptions and assistance. Linda, that was your item.
That was me, and we might need to, might be something that we could bring up as a additional conversation when we start getting into the application. But the point is that there's a lot of people who are applying for exemptions and abatements just normally in the normal course of events through the year. And at some point in time, we'll have to discuss whether or not our application is going to be a completely separate standalone application, or whether somehow we can piggyback onto the assessor's database because all the work has already been done for their exemptions. The only problem with that is that the exemption applications are not public record through the assessor's office. Those are not available to anybody except the assessors to look at. So we might need to just sort of put that down when talk about the application first, and then talk about how that might relate to other applications for assistance in the town.
Linda, if we have to rope Robbie in, I think he'd be amenable to maybe shedding some light on his thoughts on that as well.
Yep. Okay. Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, any other discussion on that? Or we'll kind of...
Yeah, let's circle back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Let's see. Discuss how reimbursement will be applied to real estate. We kind of mentioned it'll be applied as a deduction or an abatement.
Yeah.
So does that kind of cover that?
Yeah, and just so that you all know, all of the other exemptions only hit a person's real estate tax bills in February and in May. The exemptions don't hit a person's tax bill. And the assessors are aware, and we'll just have to be careful. If a person sells their house, we can't reimburse the cash. So if an elderly person receives a donation, has it applied against their taxes, and then moves, and it's happened before, we can't reimburse them that money. So the new owner gets the benefit of the exemption.
So my only question on that would be if they owned the home prior to July 1st, correct?
If they sold it, well, if they sold it actually before the, if as it seems to be shaking out, if we take applications late in the fall, like say by November, by December we'll have had to have made a decision and get the application. I mean, get the exemption or the payment onto their real estate taxes for the following February and May, for the installments that are due February and May. But if they, for some reason, after November, but before February or May, move, then the exemption's on the real estate tax bill and we can't take it off. Mostly because we can't, the intent is not to give somebody cash. The intent is to reduce their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So once the taxes are reduced, it's the exemption's set right there. And there's other legal problems that would prevent me from issuing a refund to somebody.
Okay. Thank you.
Just FYI, it has happened. There's very little we can do about it.
Yeah,
It probably won't happen, but.
No, it's good that you bring that up, Linda.
You know, so, but yeah, so if they're just going to get applied to the real estate bills as exemptions, easy for me. The assessors do all that hard work. I just collect it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever makes the most sense for everybody, I think.
Yep.
I think that just take away that additional step of generating the paycheck for $0 like
Correct.
The tax workers.
Correct.
This is a different concept. These
yes,
are
it is.
Just straight up abatements. They're not earned by hours worked or marked by.
Yes.
So
Yes.
That would make sense. Okay, so, and that another thing that we'll kind of also close the loop on that with the item 6, the review the application. But
Okay.
now, item 5 now, ethics for soliciting donations and donations as tax deductions.
Yeah.
Because the town is not a 501c3.
Yeah.
So did you want to take that?
Yep. So just FYI, basically, because we are an appointed committee working for a public body, it's unethical for us to solicit donations. That's just a little factoid I should put out there. We are not
like a one-to-one level, like
correct.
asking out.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. If you ask it from one person, you have to ask it from all, which is why they created the laws about putting the flyers in the tax bills. You can put it in all of your tax bills, but you can't target your favorite business person and ask them for a donation. And also, if anybody asks, we are whether or not it's tax deductible, you'd have to ask your tax person. We're not a 501c3, so it probably is not technically tax deductible. I know that I deduct everything I possibly can, so.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
So the IRS publishes a letter about, how the governmental entities fit in with tax codes and things like that. And on that letter, it says, charitable contributions to governmental units are tax deductible under Section 170C1 of the IRS code if made for a public purpose. So I would think that, it's probably just going to be a frequently asked question of us if they can deduct the donations on their taxes, and I think we can just refer to them to that letter.
Yes.
Published by the IRS, we
Yes.
probably shouldn't be in the business of giving people tax advice.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But we can just say that, you know, you can look at this and then discuss it with your tax professional. But I think likely you probably could deduct it.
Okay.
My personal feelings, but yeah, it is an interesting area, and I'm glad you mentioned the thing about soliciting donations, because that's good for all of us to know.
It's already too late, isn't it?
I haven't started yet. I've thought about it, but
Yeah, no, the Ethics Commission is pretty firm about that, but you know, there's the real world that we live in too, and there's always conversations, so we just can't lend the appearance of, you know, a quid pro quo.
right.
Clary.
Yeah, so maybe when we go to set up the ability to make donations, what we can do is make a general announcement of sorts that the ability is there.
Yep.
You know, so that a general announcement that would reach everybody, I think, would not violate those rules you're saying. So
Yep.
it's good to keep in mind.
Right, and that is the point. You know, it has to go out to the general public and not just be targeting the person that you know wants to help or that has previously helped in other ways.
Right. I found that with similar funds that I use in the work that I do, I usually will highlight what the fund can do for those who will receive from it, and then at the end I kind of slip it. If you would like to donate to this fund, this is how you do it. And that's usually a nice way to kind of it does both. It lets everyone know that you can benefit from this by applying to it, but if you want to be on the other end of it, giving to this, it's kind of two birds with one stone type of announcement.
Right.
Okay, so, and now on to the review the application procedures and criteria. I know I sent everybody was it like 3 pages, maybe 4 pages, but it's just something I kind of put together quickly for us to just start and work with, and we don't even have to use it. It's just something rather than nothing. So I don't know if everybody has that available. It was one of the attachments sent. I should have probably just resent it today, but it's in there. There's a lot of different, criteria. There's terms I've identified, and these are all up for us to decide as a board. So please, everything in here is open to your scrutiny, and changes are welcome to be, please, I recommend you make some changes if you think we need them. Real quick, I will say before I turn it over to everybody. So another application I found that I chose not to give to you guys, because all it is 2 sentences that say send the board a letter outlining your disability and your need. I think that's really nice. That's a nice application, but an application like that would leave, I feel like it would cast too wide of a net, and we would be reviewing far more applications than we need to, and there would have to be so much more one-on-one time I'm anticipating myself doing with people going over their finances and their things, whereas this application, so the first couple pages is the
It would also make it too subjective for us.
Yeah,
as
right.
Decision makers. I think we probably want to keep to a certain criteria as best as possible, right, to be fair. So, maybe a spot where we can have them write, like a paragraph about, why they, other special circumstances or other things that they think they should deserve,
Right.
other reasons why they think they are eligible.
Right, like a little narrative to go along with this application,
right.
Or, and they'll obviously, we will have communication with them. These folks won't be kind of coming out of nowhere, so to speak. These will be folks that, because as part of the regulation that I typed up, I think I mentioned in there, like, you really need to contact Council on Aging, veteran services or community services, which both of those are me, or almost all three of those are me, but within the department that I work under. And so these people will have exhausted all options before they get to this fund in particular, is my way of kind of seeing it. And if you look at the application standard, name, phone number, are you disabled, yes or no? And we may need to review some of these, and obviously legal will run through and just make sure we're all good, town council, on some of these questions we're asking. But it's very similar to the the real estate tax abatement forms. Similar,
Right.
you know, similar questions. We're asking you what kind of assets you have, what kind of income do you have, and I feel like this kind of puts some of the onus on the applicant to fill out an application rather than just raise a hand and say, you know, pick me. I feel like this really identifies that you're in need. If you're going to go to the lengths to provide the documentation you need to and fill this out, I think that that's a good piece to have in there. So I'll turn it over to anyone who has comments about. And we don't have to decide tonight that this is the application or if we want to do something completely different, but I'll turn it over to you all.
Maybe I can start because I wrote down a couple of suggestions. You know, some suggestions that I have, I'm not sure that I want to do them, but these are things that I've seen or thought of, and if the committee thinks it's pertinent to include, maybe we should. Maybe an option to disclose if you're a veteran, if you choose to let us know, or an option to let us know if you have any dependents. The other thoughts I had were around the income threshold. I was wondering if that, you know, kind of where that number came from on the application and what we could use as a benchmark to kind of get, you know, I just don't want to have an income number that's arbitrarily decided on as a threshold. Like if someone's making $50,000 a year, we automatically don't even look at their application. So I think that's something we should examine. I don't know if anybody has any ideas as to what we could use as a number. I mean, like if there's any kind of median number for the town, or the poverty line probably limit much lower, but I don't know how we can arrive at a number.
So real quick, I'll just interject quickly. The number I came to, I believe it was 250% of the federal poverty. So, I mean, we can pick a different percentage. I think I just threw that in there. That may not, I think that was in there as a placeholder as well. So, but I agree with you. I think income versus outlays should be taken into consideration as well, maybe.
Yeah, and another thought I had too, from looking at some other applications, is they had a cap on the assessment of the property, and that might be something we want to consider as well. It can be a really high cap if we want, because, you know, property values, I think, in Easton are on the higher side. So maybe there's a number there, or if we either put on the application, rather than making it you know, an excluding factor, we put on the application that we're either going to review. You know, I was going to say we could ask them to tell us what their property value is, but, you know, if Scott could tell us, right?
Yeah, we already know that.
We already know that. So I think we could just put something on there that will be a factor, because we don't need them just say that, you know, you know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at?
Yes.
So So that could be something to consider too, because we wouldn't necessarily want to give out this kind of exemption to, any size or cost of property.
Right, and I think something to keep in mind as we're developing this as well. I don't foresee it in the next at least 10 years or more, probably maybe even never, being a full property tax exemption. I just don't think the account will be in that position for quite some time, if it ever is. And I think the amount will change every year. A lot of the research I did with other towns, you would file your application not knowing how much you could potentially receive, and then you would receive the amount, whether it's $500 or $1,000 or $100 even. So I think that's all dependent on the number of applicants, the amount that is in the fund at that time. I do think it's important to probably award these regardless of what the amount is, just to kind of keep momentum and keep awareness of this going. But yeah, no, those are all great points to keep in mind. Because something I noticed with veterans abatements, those numbers haven't changed in years, and you see the property tax value goes up and up and up, but the abatements stay the same for long periods of time. So it would be nice to provide a program that was reflective of that, like that really kind of worked with someone's overall situation, and not just plain and simple your income, your assets, you're qualified, you're not qualified, because it's a lot more to it.
Right. Corey, we have so many different I was going to say abatements because we're in the process of abatements now. We have so many different exemptions out there. What we're talking about now are the people that don't qualify for the existing exemptions that we have in place, correct?
That's up to us. I have included on the application to identify if you're receiving any of those. I would say my immediate thought is to not necessarily prevent someone, but we would look at the application and say, oh, you're in receipt of this one, and this one.
Right.
It looks like maybe you don't meet our criteria. So
I'm sorry, I
don't
thought
know if
the state law was written in a way that they could not be receiving other exemptions.
I'll have to reference that to be sure. I didn't see it that way, because I know a lot of the other, like the circuit breaker, senior work off, CPA, a lot of those can be used in conjunction with each other. So I'm not sure if this one was written strictly that way, but if you have a reference for that, Andrew.
I will. I'm looking it up now.
Okay.
That's why I think whatever we decide to do, town council definitely needs to put their pen to this, just to make sure.
Absolutely.
100%.
Because sometimes it gets very gray. But I'll give you a perfect example. You raised a great point a little while ago, Andrew, about the income, or maybe property tax or property valuation threshold. In today's world that we live in, you could have people that live in $1 million home. I can speak firsthand to this. $1 million home, 2 big salaries. Someone gets laid off, loses that salary, and the other significant other comes down with brain cancer and goes on disability. And it doesn't matter how much valuation you have in your home. There you go. That's a person in probably desperate need of some help that would not qualify or fit in any of the other buckets that we have. So I think you raised a good point there that, valuation doesn't necessarily mean need. So.
Yeah, so that's why my thought is maybe in the first year or so, as we get going, rather than putting a cap on the income or on the assessed value or things like that.
Right.
Maybe we have to kind of see what we're dealing with,
Right.
and consider situations like that.
Right.
Because if we put a cap of $45,000-$50,000 for an annual income, and then we get some sort of application that they make just over it, but there's other circumstances and things like that, we can't even consider it because we've already excluded it.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe it's something where we want to start big, but we still have discretionary power, right, as a committee. So because just because we're not putting a cap out there doesn't mean that we can't include those items as factors. So we could still factor in income without putting a cap on them. At least to get started. These are my thoughts, because I don't, we don't know what's out there because we're not, or I don't.
Sorry about.
Is your dog disagreeing?
Just to expand upon that a little bit, I think we have to have some definition of an income limit, because the fund is targeted for low income and disabled people. So you have to sort of, by virtue of having the fund for low income, you have to define low income. But we get to decide what that limit is. If I was just looking at a couple of other applications. Brookline, I think they define low income as family income less than $85,000. That seems to be one of the higher ones.
That's a higher income or higher end community.
Yeah, but Westwood, fairly close, has it down at 40,000. So I mean, it kind of runs the gambit, and a lot of them are also using your taxable income on your tax return.
Well, let me ask you this question, Linda. Do they require in those towns, we probably don't know this, but maybe we do they require some income verification?
Brookline does require a copy of your 1040 or your tax return to come back with your application.
Okay.
Was it Brookline? I think it was Brookline, not Billington. Yeah, Brookline.
I think we need to require that, just because, and I liked your point, Andrew, about whether you identify as a veteran or not, or if you have dependents, because this is not just for us to say, okay, here you go, you get your exemption or partial exemption. It's more so like, and then for me, it's to pick the ball up from there and say, what else do you qualify for? Like, I'm sure I will end up getting several new clients through this committee, and it is useful to collect that information from them to help them even further than just this one aspect, because we help them with the real estate taxes or partially with the real estate taxes, but I may notice through their application that they're also eligible for SNAP benefits, or they're also eligible for other benefits in the community that can help offset the cost that their financial troubles. So I think it is good to collect that information, but I think it's something we should really discuss is setting that, how do we set that income limit?
All right, I think what you just said there was a great idea. I think that's a great idea.
So I don't know. I mean, I know like for fuel assistance, we use a percentage of that federal poverty limit, and that would be for us to decide. I think that's something that changes with inflation and adjusts the cost of living and things like that we wouldn't have to revisit every year. We could just pick a percentage of it, and it would auto adjust every year. We would have to obviously update it as we go. That's something we can visit. Let's see.
Corey, can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
On the documents you've received from other towns that you've reviewed, is this a program that these people would have to apply each and every year?
Yes, I think the idea would be you
I
don't
think-
apply every single year. It shouldn't be the same people every year. Is what I'm looking. I think this is kind of like a one-off. I mean, there are obviously exceptions, but if we keep seeing the same person every year, I have work to do in other areas than with them to make sure that's not happening. I think.
See, I'm always thinking like from an exemption standpoint, we see the same names each and every year because a lot of them are seniors or veterans in, blind exemptions.
Right.
So, we constantly see the same names, but I mean, that's perfectly fine according to the state. But in this situation, I figured I'd just throw that out just to, touch base.
Yeah, and I don't think we prevent someone from applying every year, but I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
it depends too on the amount of money. I mean, if it's a fund that is well endowed, basically, you can afford to see the same people. I would hope that in many cases it would be people. This is my own personal. It would be people who had just experienced a bump in the road and they need a little bit of help.
Right.
It's a temporary thing, a year, maybe two, and then they're off on their own again. But
Right.
that's the way I see it happening, or hoping that it will happen to a degree.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree too. So I can send this so everybody can look at it, but basically what I'm looking at here, most programs don't use the 100% level here, the poverty level. It's usually, 200. I know for Chapter 115 veterans benefits, they use 200%, which is for one person is 25,520 gross income per year. But I mean, we don't necessarily need to follow this. We can kind of formulate it how we'd like. But like fuel assistance, they go all the way up. They show you how many. If you have 8 people in your family, this is how many. I don't know if we necessarily need to calculate out that far, but just things for us to consider as we go. Did anybody have any discussion with elder, starting at the top, like eligibility, right? So the definition of elderly, defined as a person who is at least 60 on or before July 1st, 2021. I just kind of took what was there and just figured we'd run with it until someone said otherwise.
I mean, I'd be okay with making it a little older than that, but I think 60's fine as a benchmark. I mean, then we could consider what other things what other ages you have to be to become eligible for different things and borrow one of their landmarks. But I think that could work for us, but it's just kind of a benchmark. It's just to exclude.
Set a limit.
Set some sort of limit. So I don't. It's a couple of years here or there. I don't know. I don't know that it makes too much of a difference.
Well, it's still working age for some folks. It's not that you have to be disabled and elderly. It's one or the other, or so you could be. My understanding and my interpretation of this law is that you can be disabled at any age and receive this.
Right.
Or you could be elderly and not disabled and receive this.
That's how I understood it. Yeah. And then
so I think it might be nice.
That's the only reason why I thought making it a little older is because I know 60 is very much working age. It's not these days. So, but then again, it doesn't necessarily, mean that someone wouldn't be deserving of some sort of assistance. So you could argue it both ways.
Yeah. Anybody want to weigh in on that, or should we just move on and leave that? Or
I mean, I think you guys raise a great point. Anybody can be disabled at any age. You
Yep.
could be a homeowner at 30 and at 31 become disabled. So would we be leaving that person out?
I think it would be and or, right?
yeah, it is and or, which
Okay.
is I thought leaving it at 60 was kind of a nice way to widen the parameters a little bit and let we would probably have very few applicants that because if you are working at 60, you may not be eligible as much as someone who's not working at 60. But disabled is defined not just because I know with like veterans, right? You can have a disability like a hearing loss disability, and you can still work a high-paying job and do just fine. The disability definition for this it's proposed that it's for a person who's not able to work and they're receiving some sort of SSI, welfare, or retirement income, or may have suffered a loss of income. So that leaves that last little bit, I think, leaves some latitude to really let some special circumstances in rather than requiring someone to produce SSDI paperwork and that they're formally and permanently disabled, things like that. We can kind of play with the interpretation a little bit to fairly include more than just those who are clearly disabled. I think applicant being the titled owner of the property, I think that's a must. I don't think we should be giving real estate exemptions to people who are living at a home with a relative and the home's in the other person's name. I don't think that's even an option, honestly.
Agreed.
Yep, agree as well.
Yeah.
This applicants must have lived in Easton and held the title to the tax property for 5 or more years. Now, this was something that I did not read in the law, but we should go back and maybe bump all these bullet points up to that and make sure, because I don't know. My idea is if that doesn't need to be in there, I don't think it should be. I don't really know where the 5 years comes from, or I know that there's a similar language on a lot of the veterans exemptions that you must have owned your home for 5 years. I don't know if that's necessary here or not, but that's not my area so if anybody has any, maybe Scott, do you know where that comes from? Or
No, you know what it sounds like, Corey? It sounds like boilerplate.
I would think so.
On the state forms, that's what it sounds like. But if it doesn't need to be there, then I would say let's not put it there. But again, that's why we need town council's input on that.
right.
My suggestion would be 1 year.
Right.
You didn't just buy the property yesterday. But
yeah.
and then we can consider how long someone's been a resident. But I'm not even sure that that's something relevant to if someone's deserving of assistance or not. You could have just moved and you could be in the most dire position of your life. So
right. Nobody's moving just to receive the
receive this assistance. And 1 year just proves that you're a permanent resident of Easton, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some way, shape, or form. That would be my suggestion. And it sounds like you guys are open to that instead of a 5-year number, assuming that is acceptable.
Well,
yes.
I have a suggestion, but I don't know if like a question. So with is it like the 5 years? is it for how long you've owned the property or for how long you've been a resident in the town of Easton? Because you may have been a resident for quite a while before you become a homeowner. So I don't know if that's the same thing or what.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's
a good point.
Good
We
point.
could just, I'm planning on matching all these up with the actual, with the law to make sure that's even what it says, but I would say that's a great point. And even more reason we should make sure if we need it or not, so.
Yep.
Yeah, the way it's on the application that Corey put out to us is it would be the title holder for 5 years. So
Must have lived in Easton and held the title, so that's both, yeah. Which, again, just kind of wanted to throw something together to get us moving on. So let's change it if we can. Maybe in between now and the next meeting, each of us can kind of do what we want with this and just kind of, like I said, compare side by side to the law and make sure if there are any questions, we can just change it as we need to and maybe just accept a new application as a whole and then we can say we submit it to town council for review.
yeah, or I don't know how voting should work on something like this, but maybe we take some time before the next meeting to review and everybody kind of get a thought about specific numbers that are on this application, like the amount of years, the income level, and then just kind of come up with an opinion or suggestion on it. And then we can go through each of one of those items and kind of do an up or down vote as to if we all think, if we think 1 should be the number of years or 2 or 5 or 10 or whatever. And so we can talk about it and then vote on those specific things, because I think that the way the application reads in general is good. It's just the specific criteria that we probably should all be on the same page with and vote on if you guys are in agreement.
I agree.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So I'll put that as an item on the agenda, and I think we'll just go section by section and do roll call vote for each piece. And so in the meantime, just be ready for, to weigh in on each separate bullet point, I'd say.
Everyone can go off and try and form their own opinions or suggestions on it, and or tap other towns and see what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the next meeting, we'll have an application. That'll be great.
Yeah, that's good. And then at that point, then we can send it off for approval and make sure that's all good. So then we won't waste any more time going through this. We're almost done anyway. But the last part was just kind of like an escape clause. We will take into consideration any type of extraordinary circumstances, which I think all good regulations and contracts have something like this, and it just lets us kind of do what we need to do. And obviously no one person has authority over another to just grant this to any old buddy, but I think this is a nice thing to have in here, an unusual expense or something like that wasn't included in what we've required. So so that's good. And then take extra care to look at this application process, because these are dates that we grant the application. I think as Linda had said before, it'll be the 3rd and 4th quarter that it's actually applied to the real estate bill. So backwards timeline, how long we need to receive and review applications.
Right.
And yeah, I included all our names on here too. I don't know if people are comfortable with that or not or what, but feel free to mark up your version of this and bring it for the next meeting, and we'll go line by line and vote on each item.
Corey, do you have a copy of what the town selectmen passed at the last town meeting in reference to, this group?
In reference to this?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Is that something that you could forward out?
Yes, I'll send a few things to you all. I'll send a copy of this application and the regulation that I wrote up, and then I'll send the law, the MGL,
Okay.
actual the way it is on the Massachusetts site, and then the actual language of what was passed at town meeting.
Perfect.
Okay?
That would be
And
so helpful.
awesome. And the last item on the agenda, which I think we should, Andrew brought up a good point about, we should probably schedule out a few meetings. If not, yeah, I think we should probably start by scheduling a few. I don't know if we could necessarily do the whole year right now without Megan, but so does anybody want to propose the next date for a next meeting? I think since we're reviewing, sorry, before I open the floor, I'll say I think since we are taking our time to review this application, I think, you know, and we've decided to roll out once we find the funding, we've decided to roll out the program in, I would say, on or about July or after, right? You know, I don't think there's any immediate rush, but I'll take any considerations for when we want to meet.
Maybe once a month for the next couple months, or once every 2 months for the next, 6 months or whatever, would be my suggestion. At least until maybe once a month until we get the account set up and the application set up and the flyers out. And then there'll probably be less that we have to discuss until we really get until we really get going, until we get money in and we start or coming up with ideas to raise money and things like that. But I think initially, since we're having really good discussions on it, I think we should keep that going until we kind of get a solid takeaway. So maybe once a month for for the next 2 or 3 months. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I think Cometa had Thursdays that she needed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm absolutely fine with Thursdays if that works for you guys. Anytime after 5.
Thursdays do work for you, Cometa?
Yeah, Thursdays do work for me.
Thursdays are okay by me.
Okay.
I just need to check with Megan.
Yeah, I think she responded in the last chain when we were trying to figure out tonight's date, that Thursdays were good with her. And I think that's just how it is sometimes. It's difficult to get scheduled like that. But
right.
So tonight is the 4th of February. March 4th also falls on a Thursday. I think that's a nice coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we meet on March 4th? It's a Thursday, 5 p.m. again?
Yep.
Could we make it a little bit earlier, because I can do 5, but earlier would be better. And if that was possible, that I would do that.
I can do earlier. Anybody else?
How much earlier?
I can give you
like 15, just an hour.
No, I could. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
My day job wraps up at 4:30, so
okay.
Is about as early as I can do.
5 is all right then. Glad I just toss it out there.
I wish I could meet at noon. So.
I know. I tried to make it as early as possible with 5 o'clock, but hopefully it'll start being daylight at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So
maybe we can extend that out, Corey, to April as well. So we have two meetings in the books that everybody can plan their schedules around.
Okay. So yeah, let's do that, and then let's go to April.
Either April the 1st or April the 8th.
About the 8th?
Works for me too.
Anybody? I don't have a preference. I'm just saying one.
The 8th sounds good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll do that one 5 p.m. also.
Perfect.
Okay. So good. So we have 2 meetings, and when we have all of us here, hopefully next month, we'll extend that out even further, Andrew. And you and I can discuss whenever you'd like. Feel free to give me a call, and we could, if that time doesn't work for either of us, we can come up with a time for you and I to discuss. And you will take over your duties as chair.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think I just, with this being a week after the last meeting, I think I need you and I need to at least have a phone call to
Absolutely.
so that I understand the rules of the road before I take control. But I'm
No
ready.
problem.
I'm ready.
I understand completely. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so that is our agenda for tonight. Does anybody have anything else?
I'm good.
I don't see any public attendance. Can we make a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Second. All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. This concludes our meeting.
Thank you.
Corey,
All right,
good night,
so
everyone.
good.
Good night.
Good night.